Welcome, listeners. Today we begin a tale of betrayal, revenge, and twists of fate. Where are you joining us from? Let's dive in. Chapter 1. Homecoming. The plane touched down at JFK under a slate-gray sky, rain streaking the windows as Dominic Voss stepped into the terminal. At 35, he carried the quiet confidence of a man who'd spent a year designing Tokyo's skyline, his architect's mind already sketching plans for home. His suitcase rattled behind him, stuffed with blueprints and a silk scarf for Eliza, his wife of 7 years. He imagined her smile, the way she'd drape it over her shoulders and pull him into a kiss. A year apart had only sharpened his longing. The cab ride to their Brooklyn brownstone was a blur of honking horns and neon reflections on wet pavement. Dominic tipped the driver, his breath fogging in the October chill, and climbed the steps. The house loomed dark, its windows blank. He frowned, fishing for his keys. Inside, silence greeted him, no clatter of dishes, no hum of Eliza's jazz records. Eliza. His voice echoed off hardwood floors. A single lamp glowed in the living room, casting shadows over a cream envelope on the coffee table. His name stared back in her sharp cursive. Heart thudding, Dominic tore it open. The words hit like a punch. I've been with Richard. It's over. I want a divorce. Leave the keys and go. Richard Gray, his boss, the silver-tongued bastard who'd sent him to Tokyo with a smirk and a promotion. The scarf slipped from his hand, pooling on the floor like blood. Rain tapped the roof as Dominic sank onto the couch, hands trembling. Memories flashed, Eliza's late nights at the office, Richard's lingering glances at company dinners. How had he missed it? The letter crumpled in his fist. He stumbled to their bedroom, yanking open her closet. Half her clothes were gone, hangers swaying like ghosts. A sob caught in his throat, but anger burned it away. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a calculated gutting. Headlights swept the room. A car door slammed. Dominic froze, hearing her voice, sharp, laughing, mingled with Richard's low drawl. They were here. The front door creaked open and Eliza's heels clicked closer. He stood, letter in hand, ready to face the wreckage. The living room felt like a trap snapping shut as Eliza's heels clicked across the threshold. Dominic stood rooted, the crumpled letter biting into his palm. Rain drummed the windows, a relentless pulse matching his racing heart. Her silhouette appeared first, tall, poised, her auburn hair catching the lamplight, followed by Richard's broader frame, his cashmere coat dripping onto the hardwood. They froze when they saw him, a tableau of guilt and defiance. Dominic? Eliza's voice was a blade, sharp with surprise. She flicked on the overhead light, revealing her tailored blazer and the diamond studs he'd bought her last Christmas. What are you doing here? He held up the letter, his throat tight. You didn't think I'd come home? The words rasped out, heavy with a year of unsaid things. Her hazel eyes narrowed, assessing him like a blueprint she'd already discarded. Richard stepped forward, hands in his pockets, a smirk tugging at his lips. You're early, Voss. Tokyo must have spit you out ahead of schedule. His tone was smooth, practiced, the same one he used to charm clients at Gray and Associates. Dominic's fists clenched. This was the man who'd sent him overseas, praising his dedication, while carving a path into his marriage. Eliza tossed her purse onto the couch, her movements deliberate. You got my note. Good. Then you know it's done. She crossed her arms, chin lifted. I want you out. Now. Out? Dominic's laugh was hollow, echoing off the walls they'd painted together. This is my home too, Eliza. 7 years. 7 years of nothing, she snapped, stepping closer. Her perfume, jasmine and spite, hit him like a slap. You buried yourself in sketches and deadlines while I built something real. Richard gave me what you couldn't. Her gaze flicked to Richard, a smug spark passing between them. The room tilted. Dominic's eyes darted to the framed photo on the mantel. Him and Eliza grinning at Coney Island, wind tangling her hair. Lie now. He lunged for words but she cut him off, voice rising. You're a nobody, Dominic. A dreamer with no spine. Get out before I call the cops. Richard chuckled, leaning against the doorframe. Let's not escalate, darling. He'll go quietly. The condescension dripped like the rain outside. Dominic's vision blurred red. He grabbed his suitcase, the wheels scraping the floor, and stormed to the door. But Eliza wasn't done. She followed him onto the stoop, the cold night swallowing them. You're pathetic, she shouted, loud enough for the neighbors' curtains to twitch. Lights flickered on across the street, Mrs. Carter's porch, the Hendersons' upstairs window. Look at you, slinking off like a dog. I'm better off without you. The rain plastered his hair to his forehead, soaking his jacket. He turned, meeting her glare. "You'll regret this," he said, voice low, a promise coiled in the words. She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound, and slammed the door. Richard's silhouette joined hers behind the glass, their shadows merging as Dominic stood alone. He trudged down the block, suitcase banging his shins, the weight of humiliation sinking deep. A cab's headlights sliced through the downpour and he flagged it, sliding into the back seat. "Manhattan," he muttered, staring at the brownstone shrinking in the rear view. The driver grunted, pulling away. In the dim cab, Dominic's mind churned. Eliza's words, "nobody," pathetic, looped like a taunt. But beneath the sting, something hardened. He wasn't broken yet. Not entirely. As the city lights streaked past, he pulled out his phone, scrolling to a name, Leo Blackwood. A friend. A detective. Someone who could dig where Dominic couldn't. The call connected. "Leo, it's me," he said, voice steadying. "I need you. They've taken everything, but they don't know who I am. Not yet." The cab's tires hissed over wet asphalt as it crossed the Brooklyn Bridge, Manhattan's skyline looming like a jagged promise through the rain-streaked windshield. Dominic slumped in the back seat, his soaked jacket clinging to him, the letters words, "It's over," carving deeper with every mile. The driver's radio crackled with a late-night talk show, voices debating fate and second chances. Dominic tuned it out, his thumb hovering over Leo's name on his phone screen. The call clicked through. "Dom?" "Hell, it's past midnight," Leo Blackwood's gravelly voice answered, edged with sleep but sharpening fast. "You sound like death. What's up?" Dominic exhaled, the words spilling like shattered glass. "Eliza. She's with Richard Gray. Kicked me out, called me a nobody in front of the whole damn street." His grip tightened on the phone, knuckles whitening. "I need you to find out everything. Every lie, every move they've made." A pause, then Leo's low whistle cut through the static. "Your wife and your boss? That's a gut punch. You sure you want me poking this hornet's nest?" "I'm sure," Dominic said, voice hardening. "They think I'm done. I'm not." "All right, man. Give me a day. Meet me tomorrow, Duffy's Bar, 7 sharp. Bring whatever you've got." Leo hung up, leaving Dominic with the hum of the cab and his own ragged breathing. The driver dropped him at a cheap motel off Canal Street, its neon sign buzzing vacancy in flickering red. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and damp carpet, a single bulb casting harsh shadows over peeling wallpaper. Dominic tossed his suitcase onto the sagging bed, the wheels leaving muddy streaks on the quilt. He sank into a chair, staring at his reflection in the cracked mirror, hollow eyes, rain-slick hair, a man unmoored. Sleep wouldn't come. Instead, his mind replayed the night, Eliza's sneer, Richard's smirk, the neighbors' gawking silhouettes. He'd built that life, every brick of the brownstone, every late night sketching designs to fund it, and they torched it without a backward glance. A nobody, she'd said. The word gnawed at him, but beneath it, a spark flickered. He wasn't a nobody. He was Dominic Voss, the architect who'd turned Tokyo's chaos into order. They'd underestimated him. He unzipped his suitcase, pulling out a sketchbook, his lifeline through the past year. Pages brimmed with sharp lines, towers piercing clouds, bridges spanning impossible gaps. His fingers traced a half-finished design, a sleek office building he'd pitched to Richard before leaving. Richard had waved it off, said it was too ambitious. Now Dominic saw the truth. Richard hadn't wanted him to shine too bright. Morning crept in, gray light seeping through the blinds. Dominic showered, the tepid water doing little to wash away the ache, and dressed in his last clean shirt. He caught a subway to Midtown, the car rattling with commuters, suits and headphones, lives intact. At Duffy's Bar he found Leo in a corner booth, nursing a beer. The detective's leather jacket was scuffed, his dark eyes scanning Dominic like a blueprint. "You look like hell," Leo said, sliding a coffee across the table. "Sit. Talk." Dominic dropped into the seat, the letter thudding onto the scratched wood. "This is where it starts. I want them to pay Leo. Not just hurt, I want them to lose everything they took from me." Leo leaned back, tapping a cigarette against his palm. "Revenge is a messy game, Dom. You sure you've got the stomach for it?" Dominic met his gaze, steady and cold. "They broke me last night. That was their mistake. Now I rebuild, better, stronger. And when I'm done, they'll wish they'd never crossed me." Leo grinned, a predator's edge to it. "Then we've got work to do. I'll dig. You plan. What's your next move?" Dominic pulled out his sketchbook, flipping to a blank page. "I'm going to build something they can't ignore. Something that'll bury them. The air in Duffy's bar hung thick with cigarette smoke and the tang of spilled beer, a low hum of chatter threading through the jukebox's mournful tune. Dominic sat across from Leo, his sketchbook open to a blank page, pencil hovering. The coffee Leo had slid him sat untouched, steam curling into the dim light. Outside, Manhattan pulsed, horns blaring, rain pattering against the grimy window pane, but in here time slowed, giving space to the storm brewing in Dominic's chest. Leo stubbed out his cigarette, ash flecking the table. "All right, Dom. I got a lead. Eliza and Richard, they're not just screwing around. This goes deeper." He pulled a manila envelope from his jacket, sliding it across. "Take a look." Dominic's pulse quickened as he tore it open. Photos spilled out, Eliza and Richard at a rooftop bar, her hand on his arm, his smile too close. A grainy shot of them entering a hotel lobby, her head tilted back in laughter. Then documents, bank statements, emails. Dominic's eyes snagged on a transfer. $50,000 from Gray and Associates to Eliza's account, dated 3 months before his Tokyo trip. Another email from Richard to Eliza. "He's out of the picture soon. We move when he's gone." The pencil snapped in Dominic's grip. "They planned this," he said, voice a low growl. "Before I even left." Leo nodded, lighting another cigarette. "Looks like it. Richard wanted you sidelined, your designs were stealing his spotlight. Eliza? She's been playing the long game. That money's just the start. I'm betting there's more." Dominic shoved the papers back, the booth's vinyl creaking under his weight. The bar's noise faded, replaced by a ringing in his ears. He saw it now, Eliza's late-night meetings, her sudden interest in Richard's projects. She'd sold him out, not just his marriage but his career. His fingers brushed the sketchbook, the one thing they hadn't taken yet. "What else can you get?" he asked, leaning forward. "I need proof, something that'll hold up." Leo exhaled a plume of smoke, eyes glinting. "I've got a guy inside Gray and Associates. Junior accountant, hates Richard's guts. Says there's shady stuff, offshore accounts, cookbooks. Give me a week, I'll have dirt you can bury them with." "Do it," Dominic said, his voice steel. "I want every secret they've got." Leo smirked, pocketing the envelope. "You're a different man from last night, Dom. What's cooking in that head of yours?" Dominic flipped the sketchbook shut, tapping it with a finger. "They think I'm nothing. I'm going to build something they can't ignore, a project that'll dwarf everything Richard's ever touched. And when it's done, I'll own them." Leo raised an eyebrow. "Big talk. You got the cash for that?" "Not yet," Dominic admitted, standing. "But I've got a call to make." He stepped outside, the rain a fine mist now, coating his face as he dialed Sarah Kim. She picked up on the second ring, her voice crisp despite the hour. "Dominic? You're back." "Back and in trouble," he said, pacing the sidewalk. Neon signs reflected in puddles, pink, blue, a fractured glow. "Eliza's gone. Richard screwed me over. I need a favor." Sarah's pause was brief, her tone softening. "What kind? You still connected at Zenith Capital? I've got a pitch, a skyscraper bigger than anything Gray's done. I need funding fast." "A beat, then. Meet me tomorrow 9 a.m. their office on 5th. Bring your best. And Dom, watch your back. Richard's not as slick as he thinks, but he's ruthless." "Got it." He hung up, the city sprawling before him, a chessboard waiting for his move. The photos burned in his mind, proof of a betrayal colder than he'd imagined. Eliza hadn't just cheated, she'd conspired. And Richard? He'd orchestrated it all. Dominic glanced at the sketchbook tucked under his arm. It wasn't just paper anymore, it was a weapon. He'd draw their downfall, line by precise line. The morning sun cut through Manhattan's canyons, gilding the glass towers as Dominic stepped off the subway at 5th Avenue. His motel shower had barely dulled the ache in his bones, but the sketchbook under his arm felt like a shield now, its weight steadying him. He adjusted his tie, creased from the suitcase, and strode toward Zenith Capital's headquarters, a sleek monolith of steel and mirrored windows. The city buzzed around him, vendors hawking coffee, suits barking into phones, the air crisp with October's bite. Sarah Kim waited in the lobby, her black coat sharp against the marble expanse. At 30, she carried a quiet intensity, dark eyes that missed nothing, a notepad always in hand. They'd met years ago at Gray and Associates, bonding over late-night drafts and shared disdain for Richard's ego. Now she was his lifeline. "You're early," she said, a faint smile tugging her lips. "Good. They don't wait." "Neither do I," Dominic replied, following her to the elevator. The doors slid shut, sealing them in a hum of silence. Thanks for this, Sarah. I owe you. She waved it off, studying him. You look like you've been through a war. Eliza and Richard, they really did a number, huh? More than you know. He tapped the sketchbook. But I'm not here to lick wounds. I'm here to bury them. Her eyes flicked to the book, curiosity sparking. Let's see if Zenith agrees. The boardroom on the 40th floor smelled of leather and power, its long table flanked by execs in tailored suits. A wall of windows framed the skyline, Dominic's playground, soon to be his battleground. Sarah introduced him, her voice clipped and professional, then stepped back. He took the floor, heart pounding but hands steady as he opened the sketchbook. This, he began, unveiling a rendering, a skyscraper, all sharp angles and cascading glass, is Apex Tower. 800 feet of innovation. Sustainable, iconic, a new heart for New York. He flipped pages, showing cross-sections, energy grids, a rooftop garden piercing the clouds. Gray and Associates stalled my vision. I won't let it die. The room leaned in, murmurs rippling. A silver-haired exec, Martinez, Sarah had warned, steepled his fingers. Ambitious. Expensive. Why should we back you over, Gray? Dominic met his gaze, unflinching. Because I'm not just building a tower. I'm building a legacy. Richard Gray's a relic, his firm's coasting on fumes. I've got the designs, the drive. You've got the capital. Together we redefine this city. A younger exec piped up, heard you just got back from Tokyo. What's your track record there? 3 projects, Dominic said, sliding photos across the table, gleaming structures against neon skies. All on time, under budget. Tokyo's calling me their quiet genius. I'm ready to make noise here. Martinez tapped the rendering. We'll need numbers, projections. But I like the fire. Give us a proposal by Friday. Dominic nodded, adrenaline surging. As the room cleared, Sarah lingered, her expression unreadable. You nailed it, she said. But there's something you should know. He turned, the victory souring in his throat. What? She hesitated, then lowered her voice. Richard's not just your boss. He was mine 2 years ago. More than that. He burned me, Dom. Left me with nothing. If you're going after him, I'm in. But he's got claws. The revelation hit like a brick. Dominic studied her, tight jaw, shadowed eyes, and saw a mirror to his own rage. Then we sharpen ours, he said. You're with me? Till the end, she replied, a pact sealed in the quiet. Back on the street, Dominic clutched the sketchbook, Apex Tower's lines burned into his mind. This wasn't just a building, it was his weapon, his rebirth. Eliza and Richard had torn down his old life. Now he'd raise something they couldn't touch. He glanced at his phone, Leo's text blinked, found more. Call me. The game was on. The Zenith Capital proposal sat on Dominic's motel desk, a stack of numbers and sketches glowing under the flickering lamp. 3 days of no sleep had etched shadows under his eyes, but the Apex Tower plan was airtight, cost projections, timelines, a vision so sharp it could cut glass. He'd sent it off that morning, October's chill seeping through the cracked window as he waited for their call. When it came, Martinez's gruff voice crackled through. You've got the green light, Voss. 10 million to start. Don't screw it up. Dominic hung up, a slow grin breaking through the exhaustion. Step 1 was his. He met Leo that evening at a diner off Times Square, its chrome edges glinting under garish lights. The detective slid into the booth, a thick folder thudding onto the Formica table. You look like a man with a win, Leo said, signaling for coffee. Hope you're ready for what I've got. Dominic leaned in, the diner's clatter fading. Hit me. Leo flipped open the folder, revealing a paper trail, wire transfers, shell companies, emails between Richard and a shady investor named Kessler. Gray's been bleeding the firm dry, Leo said, tapping a ledger. Embezzling millions, hiding it offshore. Your Tokyo gig? He used it to cook the books, blamed budget overruns on you while he pocketed the difference. Dominic's jaw tightened, the coffee turning bitter in his mouth. And Eliza? She's in on it, Leo said, sliding a photo, her signature on a transfer memo. Not just a fling. She's his partner, Dom. Been skimming your accounts too, cleaned out your joint savings before you got back. The betrayal sank deeper, a cold weight in his gut. He'd built their life, she dismantled it brick by brick. How much trouble are they in? He asked, voice low. Leo grinned shark-like. Enough to sink them, if we play it right. Kessler's getting antsy, Richard's missed payments. The firm's a house of cards. Dominic stared at the folder, gears turning. Then we knock it down. I've got Zenith's backing. What if I buy Gray and Associates out from under him? Leo whistled. Big swing. You'd need more cash and leverage. Sarah's got contacts, Dominic said, pulling out his phone. And I've got a plan. Over the next month, Dominic moved like a man possessed. With Sarah's help, he tapped her network. Investors burned by Richard, ex-clients eager for a fresh face. Apex Towers buzz grew, articles popping up in trade mags. Voss's vision, the future of NYC? Zenith doubled their stake. Meanwhile, Leo fed him dirt, enough to spook Kessler into selling his shares cheap. Dominic funneled every dollar into a shadow bid, working through proxies to mask his name. By November, the pieces aligned. Gray and Associates teetered, stock plummeting as whispers of fraud leaked. Dominic sat in a borrowed office, Sarah's spare room cluttered with blueprints, when the call came. His broker's voice was clipped. It's done. You own 51%. Gray's out. Dominic exhaled, the room spinning. He'd done it, ripped the firm from Richard's hands without him even knowing who'd struck. Sarah appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. Congrats, boss, she said, a rare smile breaking through. What's next? He stood, grabbing his coat. The company galas tomorrow. Richard's hosting, Eliza too. Time to show them. She raised an eyebrow. You're walking into the lion's den? No, he said, voice cold. I'm the lion now. That night, he stood before the motel mirror, trading his rumpled jacket for a tailored suit, black, sharp, a blade of a man. The sketchbook stayed behind, he didn't need it anymore. Apex Tower was rising and so was he. He called a limo, sleek, obsidian, a symbol of what he'd become, and slid into the back seat, the city blurring past. Tomorrow they'd see. Tomorrow they'd break. The limo purred up to the Plaza Hotel, its golden facade glowing against the November dusk. Dominic stepped out, the cold snapping at his face as he adjusted his cufflinks. Silver, sharp, a quiet nod to the man he'd become. The gala pulsed within, Gray and Associates' annual showcase, a glittering mask for a rotting empire. He smoothed his suit, the fabric hugging him like armor, and strode through the revolving doors. The driver tipped his cap, the limo idling, a black omen in the night. Inside, the ballroom dazzled, chandeliers dripping crystal, waiters weaving with champagne flutes, the air thick with perfume and power. Architects, investors, and city elites mingled, their laughter a brittle hum. Dominic scanned the crowd, his pulse steady but electric. Then he saw them, Eliza near the bar, radiant in a crimson gown, her laughter cutting through the noise. Richard beside her, tuxedo crisp, his hand grazing her back. They moved like royalty, oblivious to the axe hovering. He lingered by a pillar, letting the scene sink in. A year ago he'd been here, awkward, overshadowed, Eliza tugging him along while Richard schmoozed. Now he was a ghost in their kingdom, the owner they didn't know they'd lost. Sarah appeared at his side, her navy dress understated but fierce. You ready? She murmured, sipping a martini. More than ever, he said, eyes locked on Eliza. She turned, catching his gaze across the room. Her smile faltered, then widened, a predator's grin. She whispered to Richard and glided over, heels clicking like a countdown. Dominic, she purred, stopping too close, her jasmine sent a punch to his memory. You clean up nice. Crawling back for scraps. He tilted his head, voice low. I'm not the one begging tonight, Eliza. Her laugh was sharp, dismissive. Still bitter? Move on. I have. She gestured to Richard, who joined them, his smirk intact. Voss, Richard drawled, swirling his scotch. Didn't expect you here. Thought you'd slunk off to lick your wounds. Dominic met his stare, unflinching. I've been busy. You. Richard chuckled, clapping his shoulder. Winning as always. Firms thriving, new projects, big clients. Shame you missed it. The lie hung there, ripe for slicing. Dominic stepped back, brushing off Richard's touch. Thriving? Funny. I heard different. Eliza's eyes narrowed, but before she could speak, the MC tapped the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, a special announcement. The room hushed, heads turning. Dominic's moment had come. He nodded to Sarah, who slipped away to cue the staff. The MC continued, We're honored to welcome the new majority owner of Gray and Associates. Please join me in congratulating Dominic Voss. A spotlight swung to him, blinding. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Eliza's glass slipped, shattering on the marble, champagne pooling like blood. Richard's face drained white, his scotch trembling. Dominic stepped forward, voice calm but steel-edged. That's right, he said, addressing the room. I own this company now. Every contract, every desk, Every lie you've built it on. He turned to Richard. You sent me away, thought I'd break. I didn't. I bought you out, piece by piece, while you preened. Eliza clutched Richard's arm, her voice a hiss. You're lying. You can't. Can't I? Dominic pulled a folded document from his jacket. Stock certificates, stamped and final. Check the records. It's done. Richard lunged, face twisting. You little, how dare you? Security stepped in, guided by Sarah's nod, holding him back. The crowd buzzed, phones flashing. Dominic faced Eliza, her beauty cracking under the weight of his stare. You picked the wrong man to betray, he said, echoing her venom from that rainy night. Enjoy the view from the bottom. He turned, leaving them frozen as the gala spiraled into chaos. Sarah fell in step beside him, a grin tugging her lips. That was brutal, she said. Beautifully brutal. It's not over, Dominic replied, the limo waiting beyond the glass doors. They'll fight back. The limo's leather creaked as Dominic sank into the seat, the plaza's golden glow shrinking in the rearview. The city streaked past, neon signs bleeding into the night, horns swallowed by the hum of the engine. His pulse still thrummed from the gala, the memory of Eliza's shattered glass and Richard's snarl looping in his mind. Beside him, Sarah scrolled her phone, the screen's blue light carving shadows across her face. Twitter's exploding, she said, voice dry. You're trending, Voss's coup. They're calling it a bloodbath. Dominic's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. Good. Let them talk. She glanced at him, eyes narrowing. You're calm for a man who just torched his old life. Calm's an illusion, he said, staring out the window. The skyline loomed, his apex tower would rise there soon, a monument to this night. They're not done. I'm not either. The limo dropped them at Sarah's loft in Chelsea, a converted warehouse with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. She poured 2 whiskeys, the amber liquid glinting as she handed him a glass. To empires, she toasted, clinking his. And to burning the old ones down. He sipped, the burn grounding him. Richard'll come for me. Eliza too. They've got nothing left to lose. Sarah nodded, settling onto a stool. They'll dig lawsuits, smear campaigns. Richard's got friends in low places. But you've got the firm. And me. Her loyalty steadied him, a lifeline in the chaos. He set the glass down, pacing to the window. Below, the Hudson glittered, a dark ribbon threading the city. I need Leo to push harder, he said. If there's more dirt, we use it. As if summoned, his phone buzzed, Leo's name flashing. Dominic answered, speaker on. Talk. Dom, you stirred the hive, Leo's voice crackled, edged with a grin. Richard's losing it, called Kessler an hour ago, screaming about betrayal. I got a recording. And Eliza? She's at the brownstone packing. Looks like she's jumping ship. Dominic's chest tightened. Packing? Where's she going? Dunno yet. But I tailed her today, met some lawyer type downtown. Smells like she's lawyering up. Sarah leaned in. She'll try to sue for the house. Or alimony. She's desperate. Let her try, Dominic said, voice cold. She's got no claim, not after what Leo's dug up. Speaking of, Leo cut in, Kessler's bailing. Sold the last of his shares to your proxy this morning. Richard's broke, Dom. Firm's all yours, but he's scrambling, might get ugly. Keep watching, Dominic said. I want eyes on both of them. Done. Leo hung up, leaving silence thick with possibility. Sarah crossed her arms. You're playing chess while they're throwing punches. Smart, but risky. They taught me risk, Dominic replied, turning to her. Now I teach them consequences. Sleep eluded him that night, the loft's quiet amplifying his thoughts. He saw Eliza's face, pale, fractured, heard Richard's rage. The victory felt hollow, a throne built on ash. But Apex Tower's blueprints lay on Sarah's table, a promise of something solid. He'd finish it for himself, not them. Morning broke gray, rain tapping the windows. Sarah was already up, coffee brewing, when a knock rattled the door. She frowned, peering through the peephole. It's her, she whispered, stepping back. Dominic's stomach dropped. He crossed the room, yanking the door open. Eliza stood there, soaked, mascara streaking her cheeks. Her crimson gown was gone, replaced by a trench coat and desperation. Dom, she choked, voice trembling. We need to talk. He stared, the woman he'd loved now a stranger. You've got 5 minutes, he said, stepping aside. She stumbled in, dripping onto the hardwood, her eyes darting to Sarah with a flash of venom. I didn't know, Eliza started, wringing her hands. Richard, he lied to me too. I thought. Save it, Dominic cut in, voice a blade. You planned it? I've got proof. Her sob was raw, but he saw the calculation flicker. I made a mistake. We can fix this, you and me. He laughed, sharp and bitter. You don't get it, Eliza. There's no us. You're unveiled now. So's he. She froze, the mask slipping. Then she lunged, clawing for his arm, but Sarah grabbed her, pulling her back. Out, Sarah snapped, shoving her toward the door. Eliza stumbled into the hall, a final glare burning through her tears. The door slammed. Dominic exhaled, the past bleeding away. The loft's silence rang after Eliza's exit, her footsteps fading down the hall like a ghost retreating. Dominic stood by the window, rain streaking the glass in jagged lines, mirroring the cracks in his resolve. Sarah locked the door, her movements sharp, then poured another coffee. She's a viper, she said, sliding the mug to him. Don't let her in your head. She's already there, Dominic muttered, staring at the city below. Chelsea's rooftops glistened, wet and gray, a canvas for Apex Tower's shadow to come. Eliza's tears, real or staged, clawed at him, a remnant of the love he'd buried. But her desperation reeked of a trap. He sipped the coffee, its heat doing little to thaw the chill. Sarah perched on the couch, watching him. You won, Dom. Firm's yours, Richards broke, Eliza's running. Why the long face? He turned, setting the mug down with a clink. Winning's not the same as peace. I wanted them to feel it, every cut they gave me. Now they do, and it's empty. She nodded, a flicker of her own scars in her eyes. Revenge is a hollow house. You build it, but you don't live there. Her words lingered as his phone buzzed. Leo again. Dominic answered, voice flat. What now? Chaos, Leo said, a grin audible. Richard's office got raided this morning, feds not me. Kessler flipped, handed over everything. Embezzlement, fraud, the works. He's done, Dom. Cuffed and screaming your name. Dominic's chest tightened, a mix of triumph and nausea. And Eliza? Brownstone's empty, she bolted after your place. Lawyer's office again, then a cab to JFK. I'd bet she's skipping town. Want me to chase? No, Dominic said, glancing at Sarah. Let her run. She's got nothing left here. Leo chuckled. Your call, boss. Firm's clean now, your slate. What's next? Stability, Dominic said. Apex. I'll call you. He hung up, the weight shifting. Richard in cuffs, Eliza fleeing. It should have felt like victory. Instead it was a hollow echo. Sarah stood, grabbing her coat. Come on. You need air, and I need to see this empire you're running. They took the subway to Midtown, the car rattling with morning commuters. Gray and Associates building loomed, a squat, dated tower dwarfed by its neighbors. Inside, chaos reigned. Staff whispered in clumps, phones rang unanswered, a receptionist stared blankly at a screen flashing news, CEO arrested in fraud scandal. Dominic strode past, Sarah at his flank, and took the elevator to Richard's office. The door swung open to a mausoleum of greed. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, a skyline view Richard had lorded over. Papers littered the floor, shredded contracts, panicked notes. Dominic crossed to the window, the city sprawling beneath. This was his, he said, voice low. Now it's mine. Sarah picked up a photo from the desk. Richard and Eliza at some gala, all smiles. She tossed it into the trash. Good riddance. His phone pinged, a text from Martinez at Zenith. Heard about Gray. Apex still on track? Dominic typed back, full speed. The tower was his anchor now, not this wreckage. They spent the day sifting through the firm, firing loyalists, calming clients, redirecting funds to Apex. By dusk, exhaustion hit, but the office hummed with purpose. Sarah leaned against the desk, smirking. You're a natural boss. Ruthless but fair. Learned from the best, he said, meaning her, and maybe Richard too. Night fell, and he returned to the loft alone, Sarah off to meet a contact. The rain had stopped, stars piercing the dark. He stood on the balcony, whiskey in hand, when a call broke the quiet, unknown number. He answered, cautious. Yeah. Dom, it's me. Eliza's voice, shaky, distant. I'm at the airport. I didn't mean for it to end like this. He gripped the railing, the metal cold. You chose it, Eliza. Every step. I know, she whispered, a sob catching. I'm sorry. For what it's worth. It's not, he said and hung up. The line went dead, her apology dissolving into the night. He downed the whiskey, the burn of final cleanse. The fallout was theirs now, he'd risen above it. The whiskey's burn lingered in Dominic's throat as he stood on Sarah's balcony, the city a glittering sprawl beneath a star-pricked sky. Eliza's voice, "I'm sorry," echoed in his skull, a faint scratch against the wall he'd built. He set the empty glass on the railing, its clink swallowed by the distant hum of traffic. The air was sharp, November's edge cutting through his suit, but he welcomed it. It kept him awake, kept him feeling. Inside, the loft glowed warm, Sarah's blueprints for Apex Tower spread across the table like a map to his future. He'd won, Richard in cuffs, Eliza fleeing, Gray and Associates his to reshape. Yet the triumph sat heavy, a stone in his chest. He'd wanted them to hurt, to taste the betrayal they'd fed him. They had. So why did it feel like he'd lost something too? His phone buzzed, Leo texting, "Feds locked Richard up. No bail. Eliza's flight's gone, Paris one way." Dominic stared at the words, picturing her in a cramped airport seat, mascara streaked, clutching a ticket to nowhere. A year ago he'd have chased her, begged her back. Now he let the screen go dark, the past sinking with it. Sarah's key turned in the lock, her silhouette appearing in the doorway. She shrugged off her coat, eyeing him. "You're brooding," she said, crossing to the kitchen. "Thought you'd be celebrating." "Thought so too," he admitted, stepping inside. The warmth hit him, softening the edges. "It's done, Richard's finished, Eliza's gone. Should feel better." She poured herself a glass of water, leaning against the counter. "Revenge is a drug, Dom. High's great till it wears off. What's left?" He sank onto the couch, rubbing his face. "Me. Apex. A company I don't even want." "Then sell it," she said, blunt as ever. "You've got Zenith Apex. Build what matters. Let Gray rot." Her words struck, simple and true. He'd clung to the firm to prove a point, but it was their prison, not his prize. He nodded slow. "Maybe I will." She smirked, sitting beside him. "Good. You're too stubborn to wallow long." A laugh escaped him, thin but real, the first in days. Sarah's presence steadied him, her quiet strength a contrast to Eliza's flash. He glanced at her, catching a flicker in her eyes, something unspoken. "Why'd you stick with me?" he asked. "Richard burned you too. You could have walked." She shrugged, staring at her glass. "You're not him. You fight for something real." "I owed you one. Tokyo, you sent me that client when I was drowning. Saved my ass." He blinked, memory surfacing, her frantic call, his quick fix. "Didn't think you'd remember." "I don't forget," she said, meeting his gaze. The air shifted, a thread of something new between them, but she broke it, standing. "Get some sleep. Big day tomorrow, Apex groundbreaking." He nodded, watching her retreat to her room. Alone again he pulled out his sketchbook, flipping to Apex's rendering. Its lines were his, clean, bold, a defiance of the chaos. He traced them, grounding himself. This was his victory, not the hollow shell of Gray and Associates. Morning dawned crisp, the groundbreaking site buzzing with press and Zenith execs. Dominic stood in a hard hat, shovel in hand, the earth soft underfoot. Cameras flashed as he dug, the first cut for Apex Tower. Martinez clapped his back, grinning. "You're a hell of a bet, Voss." "Paying off," Dominic said, forcing a smile. The crowd cheered, but his eyes found Sarah's. She nodded, a silent anchor. Back at the loft he called his broker. "List Gray and Associates. Full sale. I'm done with it." The words lifted a weight, the last tie snapping. Night fell and he stood on the balcony again, city lights winking like possibilities. Eliza's plea replayed, but he shut it out. She'd chosen her ruin, he'd chosen his rise. The hollow faded, replaced by a flicker of purpose. Apex would stand, not for them but for him. The groundbreaking's echo lingered as Dominic stood at the Apex site the next morning, the skyline framed by skeletal cranes and a pale December sun. The air smelled of turned earth and diesel, a raw promise beneath the city's pulse. Workers in neon vests swarmed, their shouts mingling with the clang of metal. He adjusted his hard hat, the weight familiar now, and watched concrete pour into the foundation, his foundation. Apex Tower wasn't just steel and glass, it was his line in the sand. Sarah joined him, her breath fogging in the chill. "Looks real now," she said, hands in her coat pockets. "You okay?" He nodded, eyes on the horizon. "Better than okay. This is mine, clean, no ghosts." She smirked, nudging him. "Good. Ghosts are overrated." They'd spent the week tying up loose ends. Gray and Associates sold to a rival firm for a tidy sum, its name scrubbed from his life. The money funneled into Apex, speeding construction. Richard's arrest dominated headlines, Fraud King falls, while Eliza's flight to Paris faded to a footnote. Dominic felt the shift. Their story was over. His was just starting. He drove to Brooklyn that afternoon, the limo traded for a rental car, practical, unflashy. The brownstone loomed on its quiet street, curtains drawn, a for sale sign staked in the yard. He parked, staring at the steps where Eliza had screamed him out. The memory stung, but it was duller now, a bruise fading. His phone buzzed, his parents, James and Mary, on a rare video call. "Dom?" Mary's warm face filled the screen, her gray curls bouncing. "Saw you on the news, digging dirt like a big shot." He smiled, genuine this time. "Just dirt, Mom? Big shots next." James peered over her shoulder, his voice gruff but proud. "About time you showed him. That tower, your design?" "Every line," Dominic said, leaning against the car. "Coming to see you soon. Need a break." "Good," Mary said. "Bring that Sarah girl. She sounds sharp." He laughed, the idea sparking. "Maybe I will." The call ended and he walked the block, the brownstone shrinking behind him. Kids darted past, chasing a soccer ball, their laughter cutting through the quiet. He stopped at a cafe, its windows fogged with steam, and ordered a black coffee. Inside he pulled out his sketchbook. New pages, fresh lines. He sketched a house this time, not a tower, simple, warm, a place to breathe. The pencil moved easy, unburdened. Back at the loft, Sarah was packing files, her efficiency a quiet hum. "Zenith's thrilled," she said, not looking up. "They want you full-time, lead architect. You in?" Dominic hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. But on my terms, no suits, no games. Just the work." "Done," she said, grinning. "You're a bastard to negotiate with." "Learned from you," he shot back, and they laughed, the sound filling the space. That night he called Leo, the detective's voice crackling through. "Dom, you're a free man. Richard's pleading guilty, 10 years minimum. Eliza's off the grid, probably sipping wine in some dive. You good?" "Good enough," Dominic said, leaning on the balcony. "Thanks, Leo. Couldn't have done it without you." "Bullshit," Leo chuckled. "You're a machine. What's next?" "Living," Dominic said, surprising himself. "Apex, family, maybe more." "Cryptic," Leo teased. "Keep me posted." The call dropped and Dominic stood alone, the city sprawling below. Stars winked through the haze and he thought of Sarah's nudge, his parents' warmth. Revenge had hollowed him, but this, building, connecting, filled the space. He glanced at the sketchbook, the house taking shape. Maybe it wasn't just a dream. Next morning he met Sarah at the site, the foundation hardening underfoot. She handed him a coffee, their fingers brushing, a fleeting warmth. "Day one of the rest," she said. "Day one," he echoed, looking up. Apex's frame would rise soon, piercing the sky. Beyond it, new horizons waited. Spring painted New York in tentative green, the March breeze carrying hints of bloom as Dominic stood atop Apex Tower's unfinished roof. At 800 feet, the city unfurled below, rivers glinting, skyscrapers piercing the haze, a living map of his triumph. Steel beams framed the sky, the skeleton of his vision now fleshed with glass and promise. He gripped the railing, the metal cool under his palms, and breathed deep. This was his perch, above the wreckage of a year ago. The elevator hummed behind him, disgorging Sarah in a hard hat and a rare grin. "Martinez just left," she said, joining him. "Says it's the best thing Zenith's ever backed." "You did it, Dom." "We did it," he corrected, glancing at her. Her dark hair whipped in the wind, her eyes bright with the same fire he'd come to rely on. Apex was theirs. Months of late nights, battles with contractors, and a quiet trust that had grown beyond the blueprints. She nudged him, pointing south. "See that? Gray's old building, dwarfed now. Fitting." He followed her gaze, the squat tower a speck against Apex's rise. Gray and Associates was gone, sold, rebranded, erased. Richard's sentence stretched ahead, a decade in a cell, while Eliza's last postcard, a Kurt Paris is fine, sat unopened in his drawer. Their shadows had faded. This height was his alone. "Feels good," he said, voice steady. "Not hollow anymore." Sarah nodded, a knowing look softening her edge. "Told you, build something real, the ghosts fade." They stood in companionable silence, the city's pulse a distant hum. Below, workers shouted, cranes groaned, a symphony of creation. Dominic's mind drifted to the sketchbook in his bag, the house now more than lines. He'd bought land upstate, rolling hills, a quiet plot. Apex was his mark on the world. The house would be his refuge. That evening he drove to his parents' place in Queens, the rental car rattling over familiar streets. James and Mary waited on the porch, a sagging relic of his childhood, its paint chipped but warm. Mary hugged him fierce, her apron dusted with flour. "Look at you," she said, pulling back. "A king now." "Just a builder, Mom," he laughed, stepping inside. The living room smelled of roast and memory, faded photos on the mantel, his old drafting table in the corner. James clapped his shoulder, gruff but beaming. "Saw your tower on TV," he said, settling into his armchair. "Taller than my pride, and that's saying something." Dinner stretched long, stories tumbling out, his Tokyo days their quiet retirement. Sarah's name slipped in and Mary's eyes lit up. "Bring her next time," she insisted. "We need to meet this wonder." "Maybe," Dominic said, a smile tugging. He saw it now, a table with Sarah, laughter, a life beyond revenge. Back in the city he met Leo at Duffy's bar, the smoky dive unchanged. The detective slid into the booth, beer in hand. "Heard Apex is wrapping soon," Leo said, grinning. "You're a legend, man." "Hardly," Dominic replied, sipping his own. "Just stubborn." "Stubborn won you an empire," Leo shot back. "Richard's rotting, Eliza's a memory. You're free." Free. The word settled, solid as Apex's foundation. They toasted, glasses clinking, and Dominic felt the last knot loosen. Weeks later, Apex's ribbon cutting drew a crowd, press, execs, a cheering throng. Dominic cut the red tape, cameras flashing, then slipped away to the roof. Sarah found him there, the city aglow under a twilight sky. "Hiding from the spotlight?" she teased. "Sharing it," he said, nodding her over. They stood side by side, the wind soft now. He pulled out the sketchbook, showing her the house, timbered walls, a wide porch. "Starting this next. Room for more than me if you're game." Her laugh was light, unguarded. "You asking me to build it with you?" "Maybe," he said, echoing his mother's hope. She didn't answer, but her hand brushed his, a yes in the quiet. Above the city, Dominic looked out, the past a faint scar. Apex stood tall, and beyond it, new horizons called. That's the end of our story. What did you think? Share your thoughts below. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, it means the world to us. Check out related videos for more tales like this. Until next time.